Okay, let's take a look at what are known as conditional statements in Java. So conditional statements are what allow you to say if a number is greater than another number, or if a certain letter equals another letter, or if a string that a user entered in is equal to the secret password or something like that. So let's do a quick little example here in the public class conditionals that I created. So as always, we need to have our main method, right? Because that's what tells Java where to start running the program. And that line always has to be public static void main string args. Okay, so let's assign an integer value, and we'll give it a value of 10. What we'll then do next is we'll ask the user to enter a number. So to ask the user to enter a number, we need to do a system.out.println, right? System.out.println. And we'll say, please enter a number between 1 and 20. Let's give them some criteria there. Now, to be able to do input from the console, right, we need a couple things, and you should remember this from the last set of tutorials. We need to import the scanner class, and that is in java.util.scanner. And then we need to declare a variable of type scanner. So scanner, and I typically call them in for input, primarily because it's short, right? So we declare scanner in, and we then do this one step that you don't fully understand yet because you didn't get into object-oriented coding. But what you should understand from this line here is that this system.in in the second part is telling it to read from the console down here. And this variable in is what I'm going to use to reference all the methods to read in values. So I'm going to declare another variable, user input, and I'm going to read that in from the user. So I'm going to say user input equals in.next int. I'm going to read an integer from the user. Now, before we had conditionals, all we could do is say, hey, you entered the number 12, or hey, you entered the number 15. But now I can actually compare it to my number, my x. I can make a statement. It's called an if statement. And the way an if statement is structured is I put if with two parentheses, and then in the parentheses I put what I'm comparing, right? So I could say if user input is greater than x. And what does this mean? It means if the value of user input, which is what the user typed in, is larger than, this is the greater than symbol, the value of x, which in this case is 10, then it's going to do what's on this one next line. So I could put system.out.println, and I could say your number is larger than mine, right? So I've actually created a conditional statement, this if statement, and if the condition inside the parentheses is true, then it will perform the one next line of code. So if I run this code, right, click run up here, it says please enter a number between 1 and 20, and I'll put 15, and it says your number is larger than mine. If I run the program again and I type 8, it doesn't print anything, okay? So the conditional statement, the if statement, works in that manner. You can put the conditional inside the parentheses. If it's true, it'll perform the next line. Now, sometimes you might want it to perform more than one line if this is true. Maybe I want to put two system out.print lines, right? Your number was, and then I'll print out their number, user input, and then I'll say, and my number was, and I'll print out my number. But it's And a conditional is only going to do the one next line. The way you make it perform more than one line is you put brackets. So I put an open bracket there, and then I put a closed bracket here. And now if I indent my code correctly, now if this conditional statement is true, it's going to perform everything between those two brackets. So it'll do those two lines, right? And I have a typo there. So let's run the code now. So if I type a number like 12, it now performs those two lines for me, right? So very useful to use the brackets. So that's the basics of a conditional statement. Now, I can build upon these conditional statements using things like and or. So, but let's first pick something like an equals. Because that's where people make the most mistakes. Let's say I want to print something out if the user types in my number, right? So that would be equals. So instead of saying your number is larger, I'm going to say you entered my number. Okay, now this is the tricky part. A greater than is a greater than symbol. A greater than or equal would be a greater than or equal like that. A less than would look like that. And a less than or equal would look like that. Okay, now equals, the biggest mistake people make is they do that. And this is an error because that's actually saying assign x to the value of user, or assign the value of x to user input. The comparison equals sign is two equals. So this is saying if what they typed in is equal to the value in the variable x, then it's going to do these lines. So I can test this code, I can run it. Please enter a number between 1 and 20. If I type 11, it does nothing. If I run it again, and I enter 10, then it says you entered my number, your number was 10, and my number was 10. Okay, so that's for equals. We've done greater than and greater than equal, less than or equal. They're all the same. So now let's build upon these. Let's try to put two conditional statements together. So let's have another variable, int y equals 20. And now let's say I want to see if they truly entered a number between 10 and 20, between x and y, right? Between x and y. So what I could do is I could say if the user input is greater than or equal to x, right? So is it greater than or equal to x? And now I want to say, and is it also less than or equal to y? The way I do that is with the and operator or the or operator. The and is double ampersand, which means and. So now I can say and user input is less than or equal to y. So for this and to work, this condition and this condition has to be true to execute the code inside the brackets. If one of these is not true, it will not enter into here, right? So in this case, it is you entered a number between 10 and 20, right? So let's see if this works. So we run the code. Let's say I put 22. Nothing happens. It did not go into that. Let's say I put 9. Again, nothing happens. Did not meet this condition. Now let's pick a number 15. And it does. It goes into that conditional statement. The boundaries, let's say I pick 10, right? And it goes in because it's between 10 and 20 because I used greater than or equal to. If I wanted just greater than, I would leave out that equal sign. So this is the way if statements work, and you should familiarize yourself with these, write a few programs, and in the next video we'll go on to the next extension of if statements.